everybody this morning. We appreciate you all taking the time out of a busy day to start your day with us in the Center for Alcohol Policy in a forum on public safety and law enforcement alcohol regulation. My name is Pat Gagliardi, and I'm going to be the moderator today and get the honor of introducing some wonderful people on our panel that are going to spur some great discussion. Our last panel a month ago, we had Jim Hall here from the Center for Alcohol Policy out of Alexandria, Virginia, and he made a comment about alcohol regulation that I thought was appropriate. He said, just about regulation. He said, we've been arguing about alcohol regulation since the 10 Commandments. So I thought that was pretty appropriate. Anyway, we're going to start out today with our lead speaker, a gentleman I've heard speak at a number of conferences over the course of my career. And he's a great man. He's out of Arizona. Are you in Phoenix now? Or? Yeah. In Phoenix. Jerry Oliver. Jerry was actually police chief for a short while, a couple of years here in the city of Detroit. He's been the police chief of Pasadena, other communities around the country. Ended up in Arizona as running the ABC, was appointed by Governor Napolitano, who's now the Homeland Security Director for the President, and stayed on for a while under Governor Brewer, is now out doing some consulting. Has a lot to say on the issue because, of course, his background is law enforcement and as an alcohol regulator. I'd like you to give him a big Michigan welcome, Mr. Jerry Oliver.
Good morning. Thank you, Pat. You're so good at this. You're good at these elaborate introductions, actually. I'm happy to be here. As he indicated, it's been a while, actually, since I've been in Michigan, and it's been it's been a year or two since I've been in Lansing. Last time I was here, it was pretty grueling. I was the police chief in Detroit, and we were up asking for money, which that alone will get you in trouble. And was trying to explain about gun crimes there in Detroit. So it was kind of a grueling time. So I'm happy to be back under these circumstances. Your faces are a lot friendlier than the faces I faced last time around. Who are all my grandparents here in the audience? I'm told that there are a few grandparents here. Yeah, there are a few. Well, then if that's the case, you'll appreciate this story. I'm going to start with a little story here. It says a shopper in a supermarket is following a grandfather and his badly behaving 3-year-old grandson. It's obvious to her that he has his hands full with the child, screaming for sweets in this aisle, for cereal in another aisle, for pop in one aisle. You guys know the picture. Meanwhile, Granddad is working his way around. He's saying in a very controlled voice, "Easy, William. We won't be long. Easy, boy." Another outburst, and she hears the Granddad calmly say, "It's okay, William. Just a couple of more minutes, and we're out of here. Hang in there, boy." At the checkout counter, the little terror is throwing items out of the cart, and Granddad says again in a very controlled voice, William, relax, buddy. Don't get upset. We'll be home in a few minutes. Stay cool, William." Very impressed, the woman goes outside with the grandfather as he's loading the groceries and the little boy in the car. She says to him, "It's none of my business, but you are amazing in there. I don't know how you did it. The whole time you kept your composure, and no matter how loud and disruptive he got, you just calmly kept saying things would be okay. William is very lucky to have you as his grandpa." "Thanks," said the grandfather, "but I'm William. The little shit's name is Kevin." Well, I think that's the key to where we're going today, and that is that looks can be deceiving. Sometimes when you don't have the facts, you really jump to some amazing conclusions, and they could be 180 out. So today, hopefully, what our panel will be doing would be to clarify a few issues, maybe raise a few that will create some discussion, but also some learning. Before I get started, I would like to quickly give a little bit of I guess a commercial for the Center for Alcohol Policy, where I'm fortunate enough to be an advisor. Some of you probably know this, but the Center for Alcohol Policy, the purpose really is to educate policymakers and regulators and the public about the uniqueness, and it is truly unique, a unique consumer product called alcohol. And it was launched in 2007. The center has accomplished a great deal in a very short period of time. Some of the accomplishments, quickly, of the Center for Alcohol Policy. The center conducts an annual legal symposium bringing together a whole array, a number of scholars, people who are interested in the topic. And if you haven't signed up yet, there are these little cards, and this is a shameless plug. September 9th through the 11th in Dallas is the next legal symposium. It's going to be great, and I really, if you haven't saved the date, you should probably ought to think about that very seriously. Another major accomplishment is that, make sure we got the right. In 2011, the center republished the influential document called the Towards Liquor Control, which established the blueprint not only for states, but for our discussion here and many of the discussions that we have, both from a control state, a monopoly state, and a licensing state. And if you haven't had an opportunity to look through that, then I think you'll find it very enlightening and instructive. We also hold an annual essay contest on alcohol regulation, and the prizes are significant. And this year, a young lawyer in New York City won the competition, and with the title that's there, The Importance of Toward Liquor Control and Modern Alcohol Policy. And it was really an outstanding piece of work, and that is another one of the key accomplishments I think that the center has achieved. You know, many of you have also seen the document contrasting the problems, excuse me, of a deregulated alcohol market in the United Kingdom versus a regulated market here in the United States. That document is out there. Pam Erickson, who wrote that, who did the research on that, did an excellent job of really sort of pointing out to us, many of us, the problems that we'll have if we continue down the road of deregulation. And of course, the center also serves in Washington, D.C. to sponsor, and we sponsored it. I was excited about it. I'm sure many of you may have seen the Ken Burns documentary on Prohibition. That was a PBS documentary, which really did a great job, I think, in talking about the fall of the 18th Amendment and chronicling how important the 21st Amendment was to this whole discussion that we're having here today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about law enforcement concerns. There are many, many stakeholders, and some of them, or many of the stakeholders are represented here in this room. There's the public, there's what I call the NGOs, which are the MADs, the SADs, the other organizations like that, non-governmental organizations that have a serious stake in this issue. Politicians, the governor, law enforcement, of course, state agencies, the media, of course the media, business community, alcohol distributors, alcohol manufacturers, legislators, lobbyists. I mean, the list is long. Public health, of course. But of all of those, I think law enforcement is one of the most and preeminent, maybe first among equals, at the table in discussing alcohol policy and law enforcement concerns. In my view, as a former chief, as a former liquor regulator, there are really two main issues law enforcement is concerned with. We're concerned about availability and limited resources, and I capture that as accessibility versus controllability. And we're concerned about the new business models that are emerging on the marketplace that really works against responsible alcohol consumption and our ability to really control it. accessibility versus affordability is a real problem. The cheaper it gets, it seems like, and the more places that is accessible, the more problems that we're having. When I was a young patrolman on the street, we had a 24-hour clock, police clock, and we can kind of measure in a 24-hour period what were the real issues that law enforcement was going to face. And many years ago, from about 5 p.m. in the afternoon to about 2 a.m. in the morning, we could count on alcohol being a real part of the problem, a real part of the equation. I mean, it started with, at 5 p.m., with people leaving work and going to the happy hours and overdoing it a bit, to domestic violence at about 7:30, to children being abused and so forth. And it just worked its way around to the bars closing and finally, DUIs at 2 a.m. and terrible traffic accidents or terrible family situations coming about as a result, violence and so forth, as a result of alcohol. That was then. Now, based on the situation that we're having with the accessibility and the affordability and the lack of controllability, it's a 24-hour clock. That just about in a whole 24 hours, everything seems to be calls for service that are tied to one way or the other can be traced back to some abuse of alcohol. So there are 24-hour concerns. Give you an example. In Arizona, where I was the director of liquor, as Pat mentioned earlier, in 1939, which is shortly after the Department of Liquor Licenses and Control was formed, there were only 1,500 licensees, 20 investigators, 78 licensed investigators, and 38 statutes. You look at last year, we had 12,000 licensees. It was more like 13,000 or 14,000 licensees, only 12 investigators, 80 plus statutes and 58 rules, and growing. And I point this out because Arizona is a very big state. In fact, with the 14 counties that we have, some of those counties are bigger than states in the east. And you have one investigator for the entire county. And then the hours of service have been extended. We moved from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. and we've certainly moved to more Sunday morning and other times that we didn't really have a problem with alcohol. We had kind of a break. We don't have that break anymore. So it's increased alcohol consumption and alcohol accessibility. Is it worth it? It's hard to see on this chart, but the top green points out the revenue that's generated from alcohol sales in Arizona. There was nearly $441 million in revenue. And as you can see on the bottom line, the Department of Liquor Licenses and Control, the regulators, received almost something that can't be seen on the chart. And everybody else made lots of money, and so it is almost deregulation through atrophy or budget cuts. Now, some evolving industry models that I talked about earlier creates real problems. I mean, there's a philosophy, and you may have seen this before, that we want to do it in volume. So we rather make $1 100 times, that is selling 100 times making a penny, rather than selling 10 times and making a dime. And that expansion creates real problems from a law enforcement standpoint. Works in some areas, some products, toilet tissue, toothpaste, in terms of large volume and cheap prices. There's a six-pack. It said it's dirt cheap, and when you were able to buy it at $1 or $1.50, then it creates a real problem for us on the street. This charts very quickly what we're spending. You can see that we're spending more, and we're spending a lot more on cheaper brands. And of course, this chart just shows that our consumption has increased dramatically over the years. In every case, but particularly in spirits and in some exotic drinks other than wine starting to appear, as you can see in the little green at the top. Beer down a little bit, but wine and distilled spirits up. And really the concern for us, I guess, from a law enforcement standpoint, is the question that it seems to be asked, do you want booze with that? Would you like to have something to drink with that? And it's in places that are really creating many, many problems for regulators and for liquor law enforcement. I was telling some guys last night, we were having dinner, that the last case I had before I left the Department of Liquor as a director was a nudist camp wanted a liquor license for their bar. Well, on the surface, that seems okay, except that how do you regulate that? Which regulator are you going to send to the nudist camp to check to find out what's going on? We didn't have very many volunteers. But would you like booze with that is a question that is creating real problems for all of us. You know, the Burger Kings of the world, the Sonics of the world want to sell beer and more with a hamburger. Drafts at tables. Barber shops and beauty shops and nail salons are all now helping you to get a buzz on. Movie theaters, pedal pubs, where you can, just, how do you regulate that? How do you get law enforcement when it's an over-service issue? What about server training? And who's responsible? How do you do that? It's a business model. And now I'm told that Starbucks, in fact, there is a Starbucks in the Phoenix area that's really moving to offer spirits and wine with a drink. Ice cream parlors, liquor, and now car washes. You can go and get your car washed, and while you're waiting in the waiting room, get your shoes shined and have a drink as well. And pool bars. So, a quick summary, the accessibility and controllability, accessibility and affordability are all major issues for law enforcement today, liquor law enforcement particularly. Now, somebody has said, well, why can't you just leave it to local law enforcement to deal with and not necessarily worry so much about liquor law enforcement? Well, I can tell you that with all the Part 1 crimes and the activities that local law enforcement is involved in, it is going to be very, very difficult. It will be extremely difficult for them to make that a priority. And so liquor law enforcement has the ability to focus in on the whole accessibility, the expanded accessibility, and the expanded affordability issues that's being faced. More locations for alcohol sales increase, more alcohol consumption increases calls for police services, crimes, violence, of course, drunk driving and domestic disputes. But more than that, more accessibility increases personal risk to law enforcement as well. So we're excited about this panel today. We're excited about what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be sharing with you. We're happy that you're here. And Pat, you want to come back up and introduce our today's panel? I want to thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jerry. The way we operate on this, we're going to go run through the panel, then we're going to get to questions and answers, and that always seems to spur a lot of discussion. And we'll have everybody out of here by 10 o'clock. It's now 8:30. So our first speaker today is, and Jerry, thank you again for leading us off, is going to be Laura Fitzpatrick. Laura's with the Muskegon Alcohol Liability Initiative and has done some really great work over in Western Michigan with a group there coordinating law enforcement, the healthcare community, judges in a 4-county area, and they've been very, very active working with also the industry, people in the industry like retailers and wholesalers, manufacturers from their area. They've done a really great job. She's also recognized for that by the governor of the state of Michigan. She was the one healthcare professional on the 21-person ORR committee. So she was recognized for all her role. And we'd like you to give a warm welcome to Ms. Laura Fitzpatrick.
A couple of little things about me. Pat leaves out, prior to being in Muskegon, I used to work in Lansing, and I used to work for this gentleman. So Pat, not this gentleman, this gentleman. As some people.
It would have been better to work.
That's right.
Yeah, I was a staff member for then Majority Floor Leader Pat Gagliardi, who really taught us how to be a gentle statesman and persuasion, using collaborative efforts to get things done. I'd like to see him back there. I've told him a couple of times, when are you coming back? When are you going to run? But he keeps saying no. Again, my name is Laura Fitzpatrick. I'm with Muskegon Community Health Project. We are the community benefit department for Mercy Health Partners. In my current role, I am a coalition manager. But in other roles I've had in the past, I also sat on the city council for Roosevelt Park, Michigan. We're 1 square mile, little community in Muskegon, one of 7 municipalities. Also, I'm a parent, and a community member. And so when I signed up for the OR, Pat asked me to talk a little bit about the ORR. I thought I would represent well. One of the first things I did as a city council member, the first moment after I took oath of office, was to approve a liquor license for a local retailer, one of our businesses in Roosevelt Park. I was happy to do it. I asked a lot of questions. I remember everyone going, how does she know to ask these questions as the city council person, her first meeting out? It's like, because I have been working in alcohol policy for a number of years. Again, as an employee of Mercy Health Partners, it's very important that you realize, and I had some help with some information, but hospitals spend a lot of money on folks dealing with alcohol. We spend, I had some help from MDCH, but excuse me, Your Honor, if I may, for a moment, we've documented, I'll put out in the front, but hospitals throughout the state, we have the median charge of an alcohol attributable hospitalization was $10,000. Medicare is picking up in the state of Michigan $46 million. Medicaid, $50 million, over 50. Private insurance, $58 million. And other insurance is $7.4 million. Uninsured hospitalization, about $30 million. What do you think picks up the tab on that? Hospitals, community benefit. This is the work we do as Mercy Health Partners and Trinity Health. This is the work we do. It's our mission to work with the uninsured. So many of those uninsured, not all of them are having alcohol issues, but it certainly does impact the bottom line. Oh, I do this myself, right? I go, next please. As a coalition manager in Muskegon, I had the honor of applying for the ORR, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be one of 10 people, preventionist people. When I looked at the panel, I went, oh my God, out of 22 people, 1 or 2 people I could see representing prevention, 1 person representing law enforcement, and you can imagine my heart, my dismay, and to be the only folks I thought representing this. But it turns out I wasn't the only people representing safety in this community. We had several people who were very, very interested in the responsible drinking, and the impact of the community that liquor codes, statutes, all these things had on our community. So I was really excited to be, after a couple of weeks and settling down, and someone gave me oxygen after being at those panels, I realized that there were true collaboratives within the group. The other thing is, he wanted me to tell a story about the day we introduced each other. We started talking about our priorities. We're going to talk about licensing, helping licensees go through the burdens of the licensing regulation. No problem. Okay, I can understand that. There's a lot of, stuff. We're going to talk about other things, safety issues. We're going to talk about split case stuff. We're going to talk about those little details that the distributors, the wholesalers, and everything. We're going to talk a little bit about the 3-tier, but not too much. Most of us in the panel, you have to understand, didn't really understand it. Actually, I had the pleasure of going to, I'm going to give you a plug. A week after I got appointed, I was able to go to Chicago, and this was the best, most foundational thing I'd ever been to, especially if I was going to go sit on a panel. So I went to the Center for Alcohol Policy. I met some great people there and learned a lot about the actual laws governing alcohol industry, and I was very surprised by my limited role. The first day there, we started talking about all this stuff, and then a very well-known and honored attorney said, why are we going to talk about, we talked about, let's talk about responsibility. Why do we want to talk about responsibility? I don't see. Why do I care? And I'm like, ooh, I had that moment, when you have that in the room. Why do we care? Why do we care? And I almost lost it, but I didn't. I maintained my cool prevention people. I didn't go nuts on you, I promise. I'm going to give you one day. For Muskegon, that date was December 10th, 2007. 4 kids walked into a retail establishment in Muskegon and they bought beer. They weren't even carded. They came back 2 hours later. They bought beer again. They were drunk at this time. About 3, they left that place, went up to go back to their party, and were killed in a car accident. 3 of them. 3 of them were killed. The guy driving, who bought beer just a couple minutes before. He lived, but now he's in prison. He's been in prison for about 5 years now, and he's probably going to get out next. But his life was ruined. He killed his brother and 2 of his best friends. So I had to tell that story in the committee, and I said, why do we care? That's why I care. And I'm going to tell you, I work in community with people you're representing as an attorney. They also care. So don't tell me that people in the industry don't care. And so I just wanted to tell you that was my story from the alcohol liability, or the ORR. Was it a good experience? Absolutely. Did we have fruitful discussions? Absolutely. As Ade, one of the members last time at this panel, he said he had 67 recommendations, 33 of them were unanimous. But as you can see, if you see the comments I wrote, I was vigorously opposing many of them. And so were some of the collaboratives and members of your organizations here in this room. So let me talk about the Muskegon Alcohol Liability Initiative. We formed December 7th, or 2007 date. We worked really hard. We got some money, we did some planning, we worked with law enforcement. I called the local distributor. One of my first members, Tom Schultz from Tyler Sales, was here. And we talked about getting together this group. We formed, and it just so happened exactly one day on a Friday from a year from the triple fatal accident. I did not plan that way, but our planning took that long. What we do is we coordinate law enforcement and prevention efforts. We have members from 19 different organizations, including law enforcement, substance abuse agencies, distributors, colleges, education, the hospital. I'm probably leaving someone else, but we met 4 years ago. We just had a meeting last Friday, and there's still 15 to 20 people at the table regularly. These are our goals. These are our goals, and the other thing is that I am also funded under the federal government with the Drug-Free Community Support Program. And so we have to use data, and we do strategies, we do a lot of planning. Everyone hides recover when they come in, they're like, oh gosh, she wants to plan again. But with Muskegon Ally, we chose these initial things that we're going to do. Remember, we lost 4 kids actually, to the retailers giving kids some booze. That doesn't happen all the time, but we decided to do responsible beverage service education for both retailer and volunteer. In Muskegon, I don't know if you ever heard this, we were known for a while as the beer tent capital of the world. And I'm sure for Pat, whoever saw the special use licenses coming out, at one point the city of Muskegon had 210 special use licenses. So, and Tom, you can probably speak to more what they are now, but we do. We worked very hard to have safe festivals, safe drinking, but still, we have pervasive drinking. We also thought we're going to conduct compliance checks. We want to educate them, we want to warn them, we are going to check you, and we do. Our law enforcement members are not apologetic when our retailers get, I don't want to say stung, but when they have a compliance check, decoy operation they're called. We also enhance law enforcement, such as party patrols, high visibility enforcement on some of the weekends, and we educate local youth on safe driving, consequences of drinking and driving, and other emergent health issues. So here's one. I put your picture on there. Commissioner. Tapping into Pat Gagliardi's wisdom and knowing he was on the Liquor Control Commission, we asked him if he could come in to do an event, and he came in, and we had 50 people at that first event back in 2008. He came in and spoke, and Tyler Sales was also there, and a couple of others. Our law enforcement, our mayor was there. And since then, since 2008, we've held at least 1 to 2 retailer events every year. This last one was just on the bottom. It was in February of this year, and that's Abby, I believe, from the Liquor Control Commission, along with John DeMall, who does some of our responsible beverage service, and of course law enforcement. That's at Baker's Culinary Institute, by the way. They've offered a lot of them. Each year, we also distribute alcohol vendor education packets to 280 of our local retailers. Our law enforcement love doing this. We distribute out the packages every year, and they take them, and it's a great way to do outreach with our businesses, kind of touch base on not only alcohol, but other issues. And we just distributed that about a month ago. Also do compliance checks. As you can see, one of the things we wanted to do is make sure we were all consistent throughout the 4-county area. I do work with other counties, Ottawa County, Allegan, Darien County. So we produced a training video on our decoy operations, making sure that we weren't trying to sting anybody and we were being consistent throughout the whole thing. We also, we shared that with all our law enforcement and our decoys. And in 2009, we had 88% of the retailers were compliant. Actually, that's pretty darn good. In 2010, we were at 90, and so far, we've just been doing our decoy operations in the last couple of weeks. The one community is already at 100%, and we just had a near miss the other day, so I put 95. This weekend, oops, keep this off the record. They're going in this weekend to 4 different jurisdictions. And volunteer responsible beverage service. Remember, when you have 210 special use licenses, you have thousands of people doing this, pouring all over the place. And I want to say, give kudos to the city of Muskegon. With all those licenses, the mayor of Muskegon, Steve Warmington, had some of the toughest alcohol ordinance policy in the state. So I'm sure our distributors were working with them, but they actually have they have very strong ordinances. And Norton Shores is picking up some of those beer tents because the city of Muskegon just can't simply afford to keep doing all these special events. Norton Shores, they thought to copy and replicate the city of Muskegon, and they just passed their ordinance on beer tents a couple weeks ago. So we worked with them on that. But annually, Muskegon Ally members between the county, the police department, public health, Norton Shores, they train 200 to 800 volunteers every year. And they're keeping track of them too. We actually suggested that maybe we have super volunteers, those who are managed, either TAM or TIPS trained. We also do safe prom enforcement. This weekend proms, what we do is we tell kids, we're going to the prom, don't even try to drink, don't even try it, because you're gonna get busted. We actually had a real bad bust a couple of weeks ago, and then 2 days later the superintendents are calling me, are you gonna bust us too? I'm like, depends. I'm not doing it. Your law enforcement are doing it, and they are not apologetic. They would rather bust the kids before they go into the prom than take them off the tree from the windshield later on. We don't apologize for that. So what we do is we tell the kids we're coming. We have law enforcement out in front of the prom. We have them in the prom, and so it really works. The kids aren't drinking at least before their parties. And so again, this weekend, so the next 3 weekends, we're going to be doing that. We also do party patrols at hot spots. Also, Pat wanted to talk to me. We also do state policy and advocacy. As you can see, we hosted the Liquor Control Commission. I called Pat and I said, hey, I see you guys are having a field hearing over here. Can we invite a couple of our friends? So I invited 300 and local elected officials. And I'm going to tell you, 65 people came out. 40 of them were local elected officials. Remember, the first thing I did as elected official is pass a liquor license onto another organization. We need to know, as local jurisdictions, what our responsibilities are. And believe me, local elected officials, all of those 300 plus people in your county are responsible for this. We also, there's Pat and the mayor, and I think it was MLBA president, Steve Wilmington. Local jurisdictions were very involved with policy and ordinance. We do Alcohol Awareness Month. We've done declarations of the cities before. And then, a member was appointed to the Governor's Regulatory Reform Committee on Liquor Control. And I hope I represented well. I think I did. At least I fought where I could and was quiet where I should have been. But also, there's some of the local alcohol policies that we've done. Again, just looking at them piece by piece. Keep in mind, our group works collaboratively together with our businesses. We are not trying to get them. Prevention, our group is really unique in the fact that we try to work collaboratively to have a good thing for our businesses, for our prevention, for the hospital, that we have a safe drinking environment in Muskegon. So that's what we work on. Oh, last but not least, we did some in-school promotion. As you can see, we've had a couple of different iterations of this. This was Join Together, Stop Yourself, Stop Your Friend. That was one of them. But we did each individual school, our 13 districts, and that we had individual mascots in that. And the banners, I think, are still up in some of them. Right now, that was a couple of years ago. Last year, we launched Face the Book. We looked at our data, and the kids just didn't know what the consequences of drinking and driving were, so we put every single thing that they could get in trouble for. Well, we wanted to educate them that the consequences were severe if they did that. So we're launching Face the Book this week, Thursday, April 19th. But anyway, that's all I have. Tomorrow, if you're in Muskegon, what's a nonprofit person without a flyer? We are hosting SAD founder Bob Anastas at Mona Shores High School. Tyler Sales and many of the other distributors bring the speakers in, and they've offered to bring Bob in for an evening presentation to parents. So he's going to be going to 6 different schools tomorrow. And, and he's doing a parent forum for our coalition. So that's what we're doing in Muskegon. There's a lot of great pockets of this kind of work all over the state of Michigan. I encourage, if you're in the industry, to get a hold of your local prevention collaborative, get a hold of your local public health, and see if you can create a big, nice collaborative. But I thank you so much for your time, and appreciate the time that you give me, Pat.
Thank you, Laura. I really appreciate you putting my picture up there a number of times. Next time, would you get the ones when I was younger, skinnier, and had more hair?
I never knew you back then.
Anyway, our next presenter is Ms. Penny Norton. Penny's from Clare, Michigan, runs the group FACE, which is a national substance abuse organization that deals with education, research, and we're really tickled to have her on the program because she is from the state of Michigan. Ms. Penny Norton.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. You know, when you were telling the story, Jerry, about the newness colony and who's gonna go in there and regulate it, you might be able to get the Secret Service to do that. I hear there's several people that are available. Okay, I'm going to keep my comments very brief, and my responsibility here today is to try to look at some of the unique aspects of alcohol that make it a very candidate for why policy is needed, and the impact of policy if we don't have it. So, do I just push forward and away we go? Okay, so that's backwards. So, okay, here we go. All right, so I thought I'd start by doing a quick comparison. And my goal here, people, just stay with me and hear me out. I've been doing this work for a long time. I'm very vocal. I've built a reputation over the years because I've been all over the country speaking on issues. But what I push for is a balance. And what I push for is taking a look at the impact. I mean, we've had 2 speakers so far, and we're already hearing about the impact on law enforcement. We're hearing about the impact on emergency rooms. And this goes beyond just the drinking and driving, and it goes beyond the hospitality tents and what we're trying to do as alcohol licensees in terms of server training or seller training and giving incentives to employees to check ID and all that type of thing. I look at alcohol from the standpoint that it does represent a product that is different than a lot of the products that are out there. And to not recognize that is simply being naive because it's having such a dramatic impact on healthcare in the United States, on how we spend our time in law enforcement, in the court system, pick your area. And with any major public health issue, there is an approach to getting ahead of that issue in terms of making progress, whether you're talking about cancer or pick your favorite flavor. And it has been that box, that focus of work that I have been a staunch advocate for, excuse me, over the years, because there's a process that is proven and it works, and I want to just draw a quick relationship between that. So if we take a look at prescription drugs right now, prescription drugs are a huge issue that's going on, but I want to take a look at the properties associated with prescription drugs in terms of the pharmacology of the drug and what gets it scheduled. What makes it so that the Food and Drug Administration has to take a look at it, put it in a Schedule 1, a Schedule 2, pick a category for it, and what are the properties of it? And you see those properties up here. That it does something physiological, it speeds up the body, or it slows down the body, it calms the body down. It has a tolerance level, or it doesn't, and a tolerance level, simply means the more you use it, the more you have to use it in order to get the same effect. If you take too much of it in a single dose or over time, you can potentially overdose on it, and if a drug has a tolerance level, potentially it's addictive. When you're dealing with alcohol, you're dealing with a substance, ethyl alcohol in beer, wine, or distilled spirits, that has the same type of properties, and it's not good or bad or prohibitionist or right or wrong, it's the way it is. It's just the way it is. The pharmacology of ethyl alcohol is that in your system, it's a central nervous system depressant. Now, caffeine and pop has its own properties. Different types of substances and different types of food products have their own properties in terms of it builds up cholesterol in your system. That leads to heart disease. Tobacco leads to early cases of chronic bronchitis, emphysema, different types of cancer. Different substances have different products. This is the products that are associated with this substance. Pick it. It's the way it is. Okay? So if you move on and you say, well, what we're dealing with right now in relationship to prescription drugs is that we've got a massive public health issue going on with prescription drugs, which is a whole other box and a whole other topic, but we've loosened our regulations since the 1990s through the Food and Drug Administration in terms of allowing physicians, emergency rooms, and clinics to be able to prescribe pain analgesics, powerful pain analgesics, much more readily. And as a result of that, we've got this glut of narcotic or opioid-based pain analgesics that are floating around there on the market right now that are out with the public at large. And you're seeing a huge spike in youth increase of use of pain analgesics. The problem with that is that you get resulting consequences, just like you get as we're talking about easy access in relationship to alcohol. So these numbers that you're seeing right here are the most recent numbers that have come out of 2012 through the Center for Disease Control, through their grand rounds in terms of prescription drugs, especially the central nervous system depressants and the Schedule 1s and the Schedule 2 drugs, are causing a huge problem in the United States right now. But if you take a look at the other side of this issue, in terms of, okay, so what do we have going on in relationship with alcohol? You've got it as the key contributor, and I want to set aside the argument of, well, that's the people using it, because it's the people using the tobacco, it's the people that are eating too much food, it's the people that are, swallowing the pills. We're talking about the impact of different products in terms of the health and safety of people in this country. And as it sits today, as we sit here in this room, you've got a product that is the key contributor to the #1 cause of preventable death in youth under the age of 21. So we're talking about people 20 and younger. We've got it as the 3rd leading contributing factor in terms of preventable death amongst adults in the United States, and it is preceded only by smoking and heart disease. And I want to come back to that in a minute because it all becomes relative to a discussion. And I know that what I'm asking you to think about for a minute is a separation between a for-profit product that provides, hundreds of thousands of jobs, contributes to the income, all the arguments that could be made on the side of the corporations that are dealing in relationship to beer, wine, and distilled spirits. I'm talking about the other side of the picture in relationship to and what comes out of that. Alcohol is currently the leading fetal neurotoxin in the world. So how does that translate in simple language? It's the #1 preventable cause of birth defects in the United States and in the world. So you get into the whole fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Now that's because those doggone women, they drink during pregnancy, and if they didn't drink during pregnancy, that wouldn't happen. But if people didn't smoke, they wouldn't die. It still goes on. That's my point for right now. It still goes on. It's a real piece of the picture that I think there's a number of people in this room, you don't see this piece of the picture. The courts see it. The emergency rooms see it, the hospitals see it. And it goes to somebody else's, it's somebody else's mess that they gotta deal with at some point down the road. And the difference between these two substances added to this, and that it's a piece of it, in the whole picture of all of it, is that Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4 drugs are regulated by the Food and Drug Administration, which has a whole litany and series of ways in which that scheduling and regulation goes on in the United States. You can't obtain legally prescription drugs unless you have a prescription in order to get them. They've got to be dispensed by a pharmacist if you're handling it legally. Currently, the whole alcohol thing, from the federal level, because I want to bring it down to the state in just a second, but from the federal level, I'm making an important point here, is that tobacco now, under the new ruling with tobacco, is no longer part of this bureau. The bureau is down to firearms and alcohol, because tobacco is now regulated by the FDA. So at the federal level, we've got firearms and alcohol. And in terms of regulation, in terms of protecting public health and safety, in terms of finding a balance between profit and public health and safety, the responsibility, realistically, I mean, if we're going to cut to the chase and just be honest about this, has to come down to the states. Because the firearms people aren't going to really be concerned. That's not, alcohol and firearms are two very different things. And so the responsibility to take action in terms of how we protect the citizenry in this country really is the power is at the state level. And yes, local municipalities can set ordinances and take action on various alcohol-related issues, but oftentimes it supersedes to the state level. Okay, now, let's talk about this whole picture. If we've got a substance that has a tolerance level, it has an overdose potential associated with it, you can become physiologically addicted to this substance, it contributes, it has all these problems that are associated with it that result in it being the #1 preventable cause of death in people under the age of 21 and the 3rd leading cause of preventable death in people over the age of 21 in this country, then let's just for a minute look at it from a public health perspective or a medical perspective. And in the medical field, when you are trying to get in front of, let's take cancer, for a quick example for sake of time. When research in the medical community is looking at cancer, they're not trying to get in front of the cancer, they're not to reduce cancer rates in the United States. They're not looking at cancer. They're looking at what contributes to people getting cancer in the first place. What are the conditions? What are the practices of people that put them, what are the genetic predispositions that put them at risk in the first place? And so from a medical standpoint, when you're trying to get in front of an issue, you're looking at the conditions that allow that problem to occur in the first place. So I want to give you 3 quick examples in relationship to smoking cessation. And I'm not drawing any type of relationship here in relationship to what we should be doing with alcohol. I'm talking about how it's being handled from a public health standpoint. And that piece of the discussion never comes to the table. Now there's, on the left side of the column here of these individual actions, it's education-based. It's what goes on with retailers. It's what we're doing in classrooms across the country. It's what goes on when you bring people like Bob in to speak to, that represents SAD and that type of thing. All good, all helpful. Not enough by itself. And so on the right-hand side, what you start getting into is interventions on the conditions. It's a medical model. It's a public health model. And so you see the kinds of things that have been enacted over the years, because when you tie policy to education, then you start getting change over time. And so what we've seen is a gradual increase in policies related to tobacco because of the harm that tobacco creates. It has nothing to do with prohibition. It has everything to do with public health and safety. Now, with tobacco, I would make an exception in that there are no safe cigarettes. We've proven that. The jury's in on that. There is safe levels of alcohol consumption. People should be, many people do drink responsibly. They use alcohol in appropriate ways. They pick their time, places, and circumstances. And we want to be able to continue to recognize that type of attitude and behavior. What the goal from a public health standpoint is to get people who are more at risk to come more this way. And you cannot get there by education alone. You can't do it. It doesn't work. If it did, we wouldn't need cops out here on the road because the sign says 75. So if education got it done, we wouldn't need anybody out there making sure that people are going 75 because of course you get it. It's 75, that's what you should do, right? But we don't. We'd get our taxes in on time, but we don't. We wouldn't lie on our taxes, but we do. It's human nature. If you look at so smoking is #1 cause of preventable death amongst adults in the United States. We're taking actions on it, and those actions include policies related to availability, related to taxation, increasing price, some of the same things that have been talked about this morning. Heart disease is #2 in the United States amongst adults. We're taking actions. Right now you're going to start seeing in restaurants, regulated through the Food and Drug Administration, that everything you see on a menu in a restaurant related to food is going to start to have to contain caloric value so that you understand what you're eating before you order it. Interestingly, with the exception of alcohol, in terms of caloric content. And so you've got a combination, again, of individual interventions related to policy actions designed to protect public health and safety. And then one area that we've made some type of headway in relationship to the alcohol box, in relationship to policy, from a public health standpoint, has been in relationship to drinking and driving, much of which has been fought by the alcohol beverage industry in some form or manner. And I don't want to debate today in terms of, if somebody has a blood alcohol level of this, they've hardly had anything to drink. There somewhere is a balance between what the research has consistently shown, just like when the research was consistently showing in relationship to tobacco, that, it is the nicotine, it is the substances in tobacco that contribute to early disease, disability, and death. And here's how it happens. And then you've got the tobacco industry saying, but the jury's still out, we haven't done enough research on this yet. The numbers speak for themselves. Whether you're talking about the kids that come through juvenile court, whether you're talking about what law enforcement is dealing with in terms of their entire caseload, in terms of what we're experiencing in emergency rooms and healthcare settings, that at the end of the day, alcohol is a key contributing factor. And so we've got the types of policy interventions that you've seen here in relationship to where we have made successes, and we are reducing alcohol-related morbidity and mortality amongst under 21 and over 21 in the United States, primarily attributable to better training associated with on-premise and off-premise licensees, education, tied to policy interventions that make it more expensive and costly beyond human life in relationship to drinking and driving. And so I just want to close with this, is that we've got this situation going on and let's just take Michigan right now, where we've kind of done a flip in relationship to with alcohol. We've gone from, if you wanted cigarettes at one point in time, you had to get them from somebody behind the counter, or that you were able to get tobacco products off the shelf, but if you wanted liquor, you had to get it from somebody behind the counter. And now we've got yards and yards of wolfen shelving in big box stores of liquor-based products in stock, shops like Meyer 30 Acres and whatnot, Pickett. And if you want tobacco products now, you've got to get it from somebody behind the counter. We've got easy access, easy availability, more times, more places. Michigan now, you know what? We need it at 7 a.m. evidently on a Sunday morning, because that's what we've passed the rules on. You can now get it at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning. We need it then. Really? We really do. And it's that loosening. Now I understand this is where the rub is. And this is what I I've been trying to spend a lot of energy and time over the years saying somewhere there has to be a balance. And the balance in this particular case, in terms of regulation, it must happen. Because we're already seeing the impact of broader accessibility, broader availability. We've got a situation in Michigan where we are on our knees as a state financially and economically, and yet we haven't raised the beer one dime on the beer tax in how long. And I know that this does not speak well to certain interests, but it's somewhere there has to be a balance, because what the beverage industry has been extraordinarily good at, that you win on this one, is that from a corporate standpoint, alcohol has been woven into the fabric of our lives. In every community, in every culture, on every occasion. We celebrate and we mourn with alcohol in place. And at some point in time, what happens when you do that is that you normalize it to the extent that people don't get it anymore. When I talk to kids, it's like, what's beer? Alcohol. What's alcohol? Beer. They don't see it as a substance that can stop your heart if you drink too much too fast. So we have kids on college campuses going into emergency rooms because they've been binge drinking and they passed out and they went into cardiac arrest. And on the story goes, we all know it. So I encourage the debate and the discussion, but in a manner that looks out for the interests of the corporate interests, in terms of setting reasonable expectations in terms of the lines for you, but also from the safety, from a public health and safety standpoint. And the last comment that I want to make, other than thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be here, is that I have seen the document that's put out by the Mackinac Center in my backyard in Midland, Michigan, and I've gotten a great deal of support through the years from Midland-based foundations and whatnot, and the Mackinac Center document is an embarrassment to anybody with common intelligence. It is a travesty in terms of the mindset. It's like, it just goes to show that you don't have to have a lot of brains to get a lot of money to run a private operation. So thank you very much.
Great job, Penny. You don't have to go very far to see Penny's willing to speak her mind. And we appreciate that. Next on our panel, a gentleman that I have great respect for, has done great work in this area. Judge Don Allen, who runs drug court here in Ingham County, has consented to take time out of his busy day, because the judge is usually working on these days, and maybe even in drug court today, to come and talk a little bit about what's going on as far as the judicial system and the work with sobriety from different substances. Judge Allen, thank you for being there.
Good morning, everyone. You guys can do better than that. Come on. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. There we go. There we go. I always like to make sure I'm in control of the room. You know what I'm saying? But all kidding aside, I'm here to talk to you about sobriety court, and it is really something that I have really grown very fond of. I've got a number of slides that I need to go through. Is there a way to get to my presentation? Keep pressing forward. There we go. All right, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about alcohol abuse and its impact on public safety, but as Pat has just indicated, this is going to be from the sobriety court sort of angle, and so I've got a presentation. I'm going to kind of flip through it very fast because there's a lot more than I have time to go through. But I'd like to just talk a little bit about why we do. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I did something. Why we do what we do at the sobriety court. And the reason in short is that we do what we do because it really does have a public safety component. People are using alcohol and using it to their detriment, and it's also to the detriment of our community when they do that. So when you look at the problem of people who have a substance abuse problem, and that substance abuse is actually alcohol, which is an accepted, as Ms. Norton just indicated, it's been woven into our community. And I tell you, once I started thinking about some of the issues that surround substance abuse, it really started to haunt me as to why it is that we do what we do as a society, just in general. To digress for just a moment, consider for what Ms. Norton just said, and that is, it's so woven into our tapestry that we use it whether we're mournful or whether we're happy. And think about the orgy of excess that you see, for example, when there's a sports team that is celebrating a title. They've just won the championship. Something that should be a happy occasion in among itself, but they have gone to such a level of excess that they're not just drinking alcohol anymore, they're pouring it on each other. They're shooting it up into the air. This is where we are as a society, and the fact that we're using alcohol so readily is, I think, a problem in terms of the public health and public safety aspect of what we do here. I'd like to have you take a look at this slide, and it talks about the problem of alcohol fatalities. In 2009, there were 10,102 alcohol-related fatalities in the United States. Drivers involved in fatal crashes are 8 times more likely than non-drunk drivers to have a prior drunk driving conviction. In other words, we've got people that are out on the roadways that are driving who have had prior experiences with being in the court system and having been found guilty of drunk driving, but they continue to do it. And they haven't learned from the perspective that they had already been in court once before and continue to engage in this high-risk behavior. The thing that I want to talk about a little bit today, because we do have sort of limited time, is the social marketing educational aspect of what we do as it relates to sobriety court. Those probably look familiar to some people. But what I'd really like to focus on are some of the examples of the social marketing or educational aspects of what's going on in our communities and others. Some of you will remember the Ad Council's campaign that Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk, which was, I thought, a very good way to start messaging to try and get people to start thinking about drinking and driving and the need to have, for example, like a designated driver or to call a cab. There was also a local effort here in Bay City. I actually used to be the state's drug czar, and so I used to go around the state talking to various different communities about their local problems. And in Bay City, their problem was underage drinking. And so what they did was they launched a campaign called Underage Drinking, Not a Minor Offense, and it's sort of a play on words if you think about it. It's not a minor offense from the standpoint of the fact that you're drinking and you're in violation of the law. But it's also not a minor offense because the way that the young people obtained alcohol was because some adult made it available to them. And if you ask yourself, where's the most likely place for a child to be able to obtain alcohol? It's in the refrigerator, next to the milk. It's right there for them to take out of the refrigerator with no supervision or anything else. And so that was part of what they did. The thing that I think that really struck me as I was starting to prepare this presentation was Mothers Against Drunk Driving and how they have been a driving force in terms of educating courts about what courts should be doing. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the Carrollton bus crash. This occurred in Kentucky in 1988, Radcliffe, Kentucky. There was a gentleman by the name of Larry Mahoney who was at .24. That was the level of alcohol that was in his system. And in the state of Michigan, .08 is legally intoxicated. So he was 3 times what would be allowed to be found in a person's body in the state of Michigan. He was going the wrong way on I-71, and he contacted the First Assembly of Church school bus. It was returning from a trip to Kings Island, an amusement park, and it was loaded with 24 children and 3 adults. It was the worst drunk driving accident in the nation's history at the time that it occurred in 1988. All 24 of the children died in a fiery ball of the gas that exploded because the gas tank was not protected, and the 3 adults that were chaperones died as well. And I mention this because I think that, you know, as a society, we have a short memory about the things that go on in our society that really are profound, and if we pay attention to them, we can learn from them. And one of the things that came out of this is the people from Mothers Against Drunk Driving became a lot more active in holding people like me responsible for not just sort of benignly allowing people that are convicted of drunk driving to go on their way without there being more done to address that problem. As a matter of fact, 2 of the young people that perished on that bus had parents that became national leaders in Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And so this was sort of a tipping point in our nation's history as it relates to drunk driving and holding people more responsible. I'd like to skip ahead a little bit. When I talk about the sobriety court, it's one of several different types of problem-solving courts. We actually have various different courts here in Ingham County that deal with the problem of drunk driving. In the city of Lansing, in the 54A District Court, it's led by Judge Alderson, who only handles felony drunk drivers, and then I have all of the out-county area dealing with both felony drunk drivers as well as misdemeanor drunk drivers. And as you can see, you know, a person who is convicted of felony drunk driving can go to prison for up to 5 years. A person that is convicted of misdemeanor drunk driving can go to jail for up to 93 days or up to a year. It depends on whether it's the first or second offense. We only take people that have multiple drunk driving arrests. We actually sort of give a person an opportunity to learn from that first conviction. And I spend a lot of time talking to people about their behavior and what's going to happen as a result of them having been convicted of either drunk driving or impaired driving. And one of the things that I talk to people about is, and you know, it's almost like it's an epiphany for people when I say this to them. And that is very simply that when you are convicted of the offense of drunk driving, you have allowed alcohol to dictate a set of circumstances that have occurred that you had no control over. Legally, you are not in control of that vehicle that weighs several, you know, tons probably, depending on what you're driving. The law has decreed that at .08, you are no longer really in control of the vehicle. You are given a privilege by the state of Michigan to be able to operate a car on the roadways of this state, but you must keep that car under control at all times. And the person that is drunk driving is not in control of that car. And I cite to them, and this is, you know, it seems to be even more effective with young people when I talk to them, the fact that they didn't believe that they were out of control enough that they would be not in control of what was happening during the course of their day. And I cite to them the fact that now they're sitting there in the court of law talking to me, and that I bet to them that they never thought that that could happen to them, but otherwise they would not have done it. They had no intention of ending up in the court of law with me preaching to them about the problem of their drunk driving. What I also talk to people about is the fact that when a person gets up in the morning and they wash their face and they're looking at themselves in the mirror, they have no intention of getting into any kind of problem. But that's true of the person that kills your best friend in a drunk driving accident. We had heard a little bit about, you know, peeling people off of a windshield and pulling them off of a tree. But that does happen. And it's almost like an epiphany when I talk to people about the fact that they never intended for that to happen. When that person woke up that morning and said, I'm going to go out and have a good time this evening with my friends, they had no intention of killing their friends or killing themselves or maiming themselves. But that there is an opportunity for that person that is appearing before the court to learn from the experience of what happened in Kentucky, for example, or to learn from the experience of what happened here, even in our own local communities. I actually was the judge that presided over the case involving the 4 young people from Holt High School that died last January. And there's nothing more that saddens me than the fact that young people are dying, and it's totally preventable. And so I make sure that I mention that to the people that I'm talking to, and I make sure that I sort of hold them accountable as we go forward. And so we do that in our sobriety court, and we were just fortunate to have another sobriety court graduation yesterday. We had 15 people graduate from our program. And so we're well over 200 people that have graduated from the program. And I've only been a part of the program for actually 3.5 what's called a staff meeting. And that staff meeting is composed of our interdisciplinary team. The interdisciplinary team is composed of probation officers. It's composed of the prosecutor, the defense lawyer, and the counselors that are actually working with the person. And so we talk about the progress that people are making or the lack of progress. We also require that they have weekly meetings with their probation officer. They have to have daily PBTs to make sure that they haven't drank, and they have to do that before 9 o'clock a.m. because after 9 o'clock a.m., the results of an evening of drinking the night before tend to dissipate. We also require that they have random weekly urine drug screens to make sure that they haven't switched from using alcohol to some other drug. And when I say random, they have to actually call in to the ADAM agency on a daily basis to see if they're required to come and test on a particular day. They would have to be at the testing site before the close of business that day. And there's very little chance that if they had taken something the night before, that it would be out of their system by then. They're also required to engage in mandatory treatment and to have mandatory AA. There's also a requirement that they do what's called a daily journal. And that daily journal is basically to make them start to reflect upon what they are doing in their lives and trying to get their lives together. And it is really, it may not seem like it, but it's one of the real important tools that we have that cause people to actually learn from the experience that they're undergoing. One of the other things that we've done just here recently is we started enforcing very vigorously our sobriety court bond conditions. If a person is brought in on a driving while intoxicated offense, and it's a multiple offense, this is their second or third or more, we put them on daily PBTs and require that they have a verification sheet. We actually have a new lady on our probation staff that works with these people even prior to the time that they're convicted of the offense. And she's checking for their verification sheet to make sure that they've done their daily PBTs. She's also checking to make sure that they've engaged in their drug screens. We also are required under state law to have what's called a biopsychosocial assessment of that person so that we can get to the root cause of why this person is drinking. There's attendance at 12-step programs. Of course, we want people to be employed so that they have the ability to be gainfully employed and be positive members of the community. The daily journal that I talked about, again, an 11 o'clock p.m. curfew. And we also do something called Nighthawk. And Nighthawk is very interesting because what Nighthawk is that it's an unannounced visit to your home by your probation officer with law enforcement in tow. So what they're doing is checking for curfew violations as well as giving you a PBT right there on the spot to make sure that you're not drinking, and they will check your house to make sure that there's no liquor in the house. So it's very, very effective in terms of being able to catch people that might not otherwise have been caught. And you might be interested to know this. We've been very successful in our program. We have, and this is out of the state of California, rearrest rates are usually somewhere between 50 to 70%. In our program, 73% of the people that are admitted to the program complete the program. 83 people are usually in our program at any given time. And we have currently about 348 graduates. As I said, we just had a graduation yesterday. Our rearrest rate through 2011 is 17%. So that's compared to a rearrest rate of normally of 50 to 70%, as noted in California. Our rearrest rate is 17%, and for those that are rearrested, they are arrested for things like driving while license suspended, retail fraud, and child support obligations. For things that are substance abuse related, it's only 6%. 7%, 6% for alcohol, and 1% for drugs. So I'm very proud of our program. I think that what it offers is an opportunity to really sort of give a nudge, if I could use that phrase. Have the judge give you a nudge that you are going to change your behavior and become more accountable. Because I have sort of a stick that I carry too. I always tell defendants, I say, you know, I'm kind of a soft-spoken guy, but I guess I'm sort of like Roosevelt back in the day. And Roosevelt used to have this expression, talk softly and carry a big stick. My big stick is you go to spend some time with the Ingham County Sheriff's Office if you don't do exactly what I say when I say it. Thank you very much.
Good job, Judge. And as you can see by the figures, ladies and gentlemen, they've had some real successes, and it's getting out around the country, around the state of Michigan. Next on our panel, we'll try and move this a little quicker, is Scott Ellis. Scott, I've known for a number of years as the Director of National Hospitality Institute, teaching techniques in alcohol management. Also just retired as the Lansing PD Police Department. He was a detective, and so Scott has a wide range of dealings in the area of alcohol and alcohol abuse, and in the areas of education. Yeah, you've been abusing. No, he's not been abusing. He's got a good record. Let's welcome Scott Ellis.
Thank you, Pat. I wanted to point out, I think for you, Pat, isn't the alcohol and firearms being in the UP kind of, don't they go together? Yeah. But I know they're not supposed to, but I think Pat's background speaks for itself. I appreciate being here today. Like Pat said, I did retire from Lansing Police Department, and I spent 17 years there. A good portion of it I worked on the road, obviously, and I worked the night shift. One of the first things that I started, and Detective Devlin from LPD sitting here, we started a hospitality group in Lansing, which I attended yesterday, and it's been going 10 years now, 13 years we started it, and it's similar to what Muskegon does and other ones are now doing, where we bring the retailers in along with law enforcement. I like to tell the story of the first one that we set up. We had probably 30 people there. It was at an establishment, and a lot of the local bar members just beat up on us for about an hour in law enforcement about what we do and enforcement and that type of thing. Now it's the other way around. Now we're out there educating and we're working with them. Well, at that same time, I also worked 10 years for the Office of Highway Safety Planning, doing drunk driving enforcement, youth alcohol enforcement, and I spent many years developing a seatbelt, and we developed programs for prevention. But I agree with Penny and everything here, which probably surprises you, but I do agree we need to educate. We have to educate and we have to enforce. There's absolutely no other way around it. Even from the Michigan Licensed Beverage Association, we do not want problem establishments. We don't want members that are getting in trouble for overservice or selling to minors. We're here to make a profit and make a business, and we also know that alcohol is part of it. I'm reading the book from the last class actually on liquor, toward liquor control, and it's very interesting to see what happened with prohibition and what it causes. I think we're seeing that now with prescription drugs. I worked narcotics for 3 years, and you know, legalization of things is not always the answer, but also preventing it 100% is not the answer. So we do have to find a balance, and we all have to be on the same team here to make this happen. So what I'd like to do is show kind of what we're doing from the National Hospitality Institute and the Michigan Licensed Beverage Association within the industry, within the communities. One of the things that I interviewed on with the MLBA was bringing it back to grassroots. We hosted our first town hall meeting down in South Haven last week with the state representative. We had the sheriff, and we had local police chief, and we had invited every single licensee in the town there to talk about education, talk about what we need to do, talk about the changes that are in the liquor code and regulation. Do I think some that need to be adjusted? Sure, but we are 100% behind regulation. The MLBA does believe in regulation. They believe in proper enforcement of those. Real quick, the history of the MLBA, founded in the 1930s, obviously right around after Prohibition ended. Our members are of all sizes. We have on-premise, off-premise golf courses, hotels, many different establishments, and we're trying to grow that and make it more of a hospitality type group as we speak. Out of that, 3 companies evolved. One was a for-profit mutual insurance company, which is still in existence, for liquor liability insurance for licensees. And the other one, obviously the larger association, is the not-for-profit Michigan Licensed Beverage Association, which we're part of, and we have several members here that represent licensees, obviously, on regulation issues, on regulatory reform, working with the industry, with beer, wine wholesalers, ADAs, again, to make sure that things are done properly. We don't want illegal booze being smuggled into the state, which we know is a huge problem. We don't want that type of thing. That's how some of our youth will get it. We have to come to agreements. And then, of course, the one that I started with is the National Hospitality Institute, which administers educational programs. I am 100% behind education. NHI, MLBA is. We are nationwide. We are in 23 states physically, and we're in all 50 states online. We're working on legislation in Guam, which I can't wait to go do the trainer there. But the idea is there is a responsibility, and we have to educate. We're working on Hawaii, which I want to go back to, of course. But we believe in it. I was at a responsible retailer conference in Boston last week, and another 3-day forum that we attend to talk about responsibility and get into debate on how we can come to a common ground. And I don't think it'll ever go away, but there's always got to be this lively debate on both sides, and I truly believe that. What NHI does, what we did a while back is we expanded many programs. We didn't just want to train servers, because we believe in the community enforcement or education, we believe in law enforcement education. So what we did, we hired Ronald Lee Pollad, who's many years with the Liquor Control Commission, who is our liquor law enforcement specialist. She's our prevention specialist, along with when we started working together back 10 years ago or so. Ronnie and I were real big into the prevention side and working with them. And then obviously hired an enforcement officer, which was me, and now I'm retired and actually working there full time. Our model is do it right the first time. We believe in proper education. We don't believe in putting a program out there that is you're server trained and here's your certificate and go. We evaluate every single one of our instructors. They submit applications. They work for us as a contract employee. They don't just buy the books and go teach their own thing. If I get a complaint that comes in about an instructor, I always know there's 3 sides to every story, of course. So the first thing I do is call the instructor and get their side of the story. I call the person that's complaining, and then I try to determine what happened. And I've had to send letters to our instructors saying you will no longer say that. That's not the way it is. So we do have a program that we have take a lot of pride in, and that we believe that is a very good program that we manage and monitor on a regular basis. And again, it's a not-for-profit association out of our program out of Michigan. One of the other things that we did, and we will be bringing back soon, is the Michigan Liquor Licensing Training Seminar. And the reason that one's important is people like to buy bars that think it's going to be really cool to own a bar. And they don't realize that bar owners are not rich, they work a lot of hours, and it's time consuming, there's a lot of responsibility. So we have a program, and we'll be bringing it back. It kind of slowed down for a while with the economy down. People were not sending their members to training, or their employees. But I talked to some people yesterday, they were asking where it was at. And we cover liquor law, we cover the basics. You need to know the liability of what you're getting into. You are serving a drug, and we know that. And you are serving a drug that is regulated, and you need to be responsible for it. The next thing we do is the Michigan Liquor Law Enforcement Training Seminar. It's been our second most successful program, and Ronnie and I started that 6, 7 years ago. And literally, I was on an airplane going to a conference, and I thought about, this is horrible. I've been working night shift for many years. I've been working with the Office of Highway Safety Planning, and we had a program called Cops and Shops, where we were putting plainclothes officers in the establishments to target the minor, because we have to target both sides. It's not always just the retailer, it's also the minor that we need to educate, enforce, and put a little fear of law enforcement in them. Well, the problem was we're doing these grants around the state, and law enforcement had no clue how to enforce liquor law. I mean, zero. There's a lot of myths since the 1930s since alcohol's been around forever, but since the 30s when Prohibition was lifted, there's a lot of myths that are out there that people don't know. Law enforcement are some of the biggest spreading of the myths. They don't know. And I'll give you an example. I graduated from Ferris. I graduated from Ferris in the police academy there, and we had 0 liquor law training. I hired in at MSU as a police officer for about a year, and then I came over to Lansing, and here I am, first day at Lansing. All right, night shift. You get every bar in your district once a month and do a liquor inspection. Okay, I'll walk in and not have a clue what to do. Right? Had no idea whatsoever what to do. So we've designed this program, and now, like I said, it's our second most successful program, and we are doing probably about 8 to 10 a year. We fill it in average about 25 to 30 police officers, including chiefs, sheriffs, clerks. Now, the city clerks and township clerks are really getting big into the class, because we cover liquor law from the top, from the licensing all the way down to working with local law enforcement and working with your community prevention in there. We cover that. And it has been very successful. We're doing another one in Mason on the 24th, and actually Chairman Deloney's going to be there and Commissioner Quimby are going to be there, because they want to see this program firsthand. And we've had several liquor enforcement agents or officers come through the program. So it's been very successful. If you ever taught law enforcement or speak to them, they're the hardest people in the world to teach, but it's a fun class. Oops. And then our last one, obviously, we talked about successful bar management. But the biggest one, our biggest program that we believe in, we take most of the pride in, is the foundation of the National Hospitality Institute, is our techniques of alcohol management. Like I said, we are in 23 states physically. We're in 50 online. We know we have to move at some point to online training. I'm going kicking and screaming because I'm more of a classroom type of person, but we also have to balance, like anything else with modern times, at least get the education out there. It's a 3-hour server training program, similar to TIPS, similar to other educational programs out there, but again, it's been around. It was founded, created by law enforcement and licensees. Okay, so it was both sides and prevention. And the Office of Highway Safety Planning was part of it at the time in 1983. And we have a lot of pride in this program. Again, I mentioned how we monitor on a regular basis. When we talk about the seminar, I kind of cover some of the things we cover in that seminar, are health and rule regulations. Again, you gotta remember, our members are not just serving alcohol. They have a ton of other regulations and rules that they have to follow, and health department regulations, and the food safety and building code and all these other things. So there's a lot that getting into the bar business or restaurant business is not just going to fill out an application and say, here I go, I want to open, and the responsibility goes along with that. Again, the other thing we enforce, or we stress tremendously, is working with law enforcement. When we started that with Ronnie and I, we're big on that. When Chris and I started here in Lansing, we found it to be very successful. Now, like I said, we're taking it statewide. We have law enforcement calling our office on a daily basis, sometimes at midnight because they work the night shift, and leaving us a message because they need, hey, what about this? Well, I also taken it to the members. Said, a member, first thing they'll call and say, I'm having this problem. The first question I'll ask them is, have you talked to the local officer? Have you talked to the district officer? Have you talked to the precinct sergeant or whoever that's in that area to find out what you can do to prevent these problems, or what you can do to prevent them to happen, or when it does happen, how do you want me to respond? So we're really bridging the gap between law enforcement and licensees, and we want to continue doing that. And our licensees have been very, very receptive. You have to admit, I can honestly say I'm the first retired law enforcement officer ever to be the executive director of the Michigan Licensed Beverage Association. Hopefully there may be more, I don't know. But I can remember the first time I presented to them was a room full of bar owners up north, and I presented the Cops and Shops program 15 years ago, and there was dead silence and a lot of mean glares at me being law enforcement. By the time we were done, there was a very good response of, hey, this is a good idea and we do need to work with you. Now, does that mean every bar, every restaurant? No, absolutely not. It doesn't mean every law enforcement either. We have to make sure we can work with that. I already talked about the law enforcement seminar. You can see what it covers. It covers investigations, laws, proper methods of using decoys. We are very strong proponents of compliance checks. In fact, when I was in Boston, we met with the group that has I can't think of the name of it now, but they do compliance checks within companies, not within law enforcement. We're going to start promoting it for our members to do, because a lot of owners, they don't want the problems. Okay, they don't want to serve alcohol. Just like the judge said, people don't go out and say, I'm going to get drunk and drive home tonight. If they do, obviously that's a serious issue, a serious problem. But we need to we want our owners to have self-manage themselves, because obviously that helps them in the long run. They run a more successful business. Majority of the people in this room probably do not want to go into an establishment that is known for fighting problems. We want to go in, have a few drinks, have a dinner, and enjoy it in a nice, peaceful situation, right? So we encourage that, and we encourage decoy operations. When we teach our law enforcement class, we cover it in depth. We teach them no tricks. We teach them, let's be honest about this. This is what you need to do. You're going to catch the ones that need to be, they need to be caught and need to be dealt with. When I was working for LPD and we were working undercover, we would do the decoy operations. We had officers that were trying to set it up like a drug deal. Let's go in and trip with this and do that, and explain to them, no, this is actually a compliance check. We're just trying to make sure they're in compliance with what we're doing, and we really promote that within the class. Again, it helps create a mutual understanding, interpretation of the common rules and regulations, which we all know are ever changing. There's the proposed changes that are out there now from the ORR that we'll wait and see. Keep hearing 2 weeks, hearing that for several months now that it's going to come out. And again, some are going to be positive, some are going to be negative. But the bottom line is it's starting that talk and that discussion, and that's what we need. And we need to find we need to educate everybody once they're there. I talked about managing the bartenders, key skills, bartender theft, beverage control, and then of course the server education. We make sure the TAM program's in there. And I want to thank everybody here for doing this, and I think these are great that Pat and the Alcohol Policy Center for Alcohol Policy is putting these on. I do think it's something that needs to continue as far as discussion. I think when I say both sides or all sides, it is, you know, we realize prohibition is not going to work, and we need to make sure that we do have a common ground that we can prevent, because I have dealt with all the problems on the night shift, and I can say majority of those were alcohol related at that time. But we also have to look, it's a big aspect. It's not just the industry, it's not just the bars and restaurants or the off-premise. It's also the people that are partaking. We need to educate and do the drunk driving course and that type of thing. So, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And our last presenter this morning is from the Attorney General's office. I was looking for the most interesting person in the world. Unfortunately, I came up with Don McGehee. But Don has been a dear friend for a long time, and he runs the division for the Attorney General. This Attorney General, Mr. Bill Schuette, and for the former Attorney General, Mr. Mike Cox, runs the division that oversees alcohol, horse racing, lottery, and gaming. So he is kind of the Lord of the Sins, if I may introduce Mr. Don McGehee.
Actually, Pat's blind. My name is Matt Foley, motivational speaker, and live in a van down by the river. I'm going to give you a little basic outline of what the Attorney General's office does with respect to integrating with all the alcohol policy groups, as well as how our division is set up, and some basic statistics and some basic ideas of some of the litigation we get involved with. As you'll note, the first slide I have, this is not a political commercial, is the Attorney General, Bill Schuette. And he takes regulating alcohol very seriously, believes in the three-tier system that we have in Michigan. That's my name, and I'm the Division Chief of the Alcohol Gambling Enforcement Division, otherwise known as AGED. It's not a geriatric division. Here's our organizational chart, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with some of the assistant attorney generals that you work with from time to time, some of you that are involved in violation hearings or other issues involving alcohol regulation. We have basically 12 attorneys and 5 support staff people. The main office is located in the Williams Building in Lansing. Then we have another office in Southfield. That's also we're housed with the Liquor Control Commission in Southfield. And we have an office in the Diamonddale area. We have it marked as Lansing, the general office building. That's the headquarters for the Liquor Control Commission. The state's guiding principle, many of you will know, on November 8th, 1932, Michigan became the first state to ratify the 21st Amendment. There ended the purple gang shenanigans and bootlegging. Another interesting thing to note, on the 75 years of the Liquor Control Commission's history, it's always been the state's guiding principle to strictly regulate the sale and distribution of alcohol in order to protect the rights and interests of Michigan citizens. And notably, one of the first constitutional initiatives by ballot proposal, which was passed overwhelmingly, was the creation of the Liquor Commission in 1932. Tremendous amount of money generated through the industry, estimated to be $3.5 billion in gross sales. Over right around $335 million in tax revenues. Licensing violations that we prosecute, most of them are sales to underage persons, about 40% of them. I'm glad to hear that Scott's got a good TAMS program going, and the Commission has always taken that, as well as the Attorney General, very seriously. Server trainer programs in order to decrease those types of violations. Service to visibly intoxicated persons, and a number of other violations that you can see. Any and all kinds of illegal activities. The Commission license all kinds of businesses, including strip bars as well, as I'm sure you know. From 2002 to 2011, we've had about 11 million in fines were assessed against liquor licensees. We've also collected about 12.7 million in jeopardy assessments, which really is a function that we do for the Department of Treasury. While I'm on the subject, Penny, I'd like to get a list of the tax cheaters that you know of. Protecting the public health and welfare. We had over 25,000 complaints during that time period issued and drafted by the Attorney General. Over half of those violations come from the Liquor Control Enforcement. Liquor Control Commission enforcement. About 40 to 45% of those violation complaints go to hearing. We're about 17,000 liquor licensees, and we also provide general counsel to the Gaming Control Board, which is about 25,000 gaming licensees. But with all of that regulation, I don't want you to think that we are the alcohol Gestapo, because we're not. And some of you might not remember Hogan's Hero, but he knows nothing. Some of the integration between the Attorney General's office and alcohol policy groups, you'll see right here, alcohol energy drinks were a big issue, caffeine, and they were marketed to younger drinkers. In 2007, 29 Attorney Generals, including the Michigan Attorney General, wrote the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau questioning these beverages and why they were being classified as malt beverages. In 2009, 25 state attorneys requested the Food and Drug Administration to look into these caffeine alcoholic beverages, and had testimony from various medical professionals arguing that the caffeine presented serious health and public risks. In a very progressive move on the Liquor Control Commission's part, in 2010, they were the first commission in the country to actually ban these alcohol energy drinks. I thought it was a pretty blazing sort of move on their part, because the evidence out there was still not solidified enough to necessarily back that up in court. But their timing was great, and I think it got the Federal Drug Administration to move, because they were sitting on it for a long time, as you can see. And right after the Michigan Commission took their action in November of 2010, the FDA issued warning letters indicating that these stimulants were not generally recognized as safe, and that resulted in them being taken off the shelves all over the country. Another issue with flavored malt beverages, which was another health and safety issue that came about. And some of the alcohol policy groups were biggest advocates. They would put up screens like this showing one of the products for Loco and how intoxicating it was for the youth, and comparing it to a 6-pack of beer. In 2011, the Michigan Attorney General signed a letter with respect to that with the Maryland and Utah Attorney Generals questioning these drinks and the alcohol content in it, and providing comment on the consent agreement that the Food and Drug Administration was going to be entering into with Fusion Projects. Another huge controversial flavored malt beverage, Blast by Colt 45, is another situation where the Attorney Generals are sending letters and objections to the federal authorities with respect to the health and safety of that drink. And all of this comes together when we're working with the alcohol policy groups, and really making a point out of emphasizing that this needs to be addressed and taken care of. Sometimes our biggest advocates, though, are the manufacturers themselves, and we can get their cooperation sometimes, and that really makes a difference. I know that early on we got Anheuser-Busch and Miller's cooperation with some of their potent drinks, Tilt and Juice, and they voluntarily agreed to take it off. So if we can do that, that's the way to go. Unfortunately, this screen, for whatever reason, is not showing this label right here. I'm going to get into this just to give you a little basic idea of some of the litigation. The Attorney General's office gets involved with respect to liquor issues. And the Commission, of course, approves the various labeling that comes into the state on the various products. It has a rule that they basically use as a guiding principle. And one of the beers that from the Flying Dog Brewery that labels that came through for approval was the Raging Bitch beer. And you can't really see it, unfortunately, on here, but the graphic itself, which they refer to as artwork, and the contents of the label is quite inflammatory, and it's quite explicit with respect to the female genitile, and frankly, many people would think it was on the obscene side in terms of what the label actually suggests, and in terms of the graphics itself. But it's very difficult to come up with a constitutional basis to deny labels like this, unfortunately, because absent them being obscene or deceptive or false or misleading, it's with respect to the Supreme Court case law, the First Amendment is jealously guarded, and so you see the TTB basically lets most of the labeling go through. Some of the states will take proactive action on it, and when they do, if there's not a solid temperance issue, or it's not obscene or misleading or deceiving, you're going to run into a lot of exposure on being sued under Section 1983 for violating their First Amendment rights, speech and their artistic rights with respect to the label. Here are some labels that were actually approved. Arrogant Bastard Ale, Sexual Chocolate, Old Leg Humper, and many of these are quite objectionable to a lot of the public, but nevertheless come in. A lot of them, well, all of them there are craft beers, but you'll see wines coming up with some unique labels like that too. And so absent alcohol policy groups objecting to it, and something being changed that would enable the authorities to have more authority without crossing the line, there's not a heck of a lot you can do about it. And right now, we're in federal district court right now. The Flying Dog Brewery sued us on the Raging Bitch label because we denied that label, and that is coming up for motion next month in Judge Jonger's courtroom. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that case. Here's another controversial product. It's been approved, Little Krugy alcohol, and you can see the shape that it's in and what it's representing, and the slogans of the newcomer to town and so forth. Again, another product that comes in that really doesn't present necessarily the health or safety or welfare issue, but is rather objectionable with respect to its configuration and the message that it sends. Here are some other products: infused alcohol whipped cream. That's a spirits, actually. In the Jello shots as well. There's suck and blow below on the right. In the Jello shots, of course, which are all issues with respect to health and safety and younger, appealing to the younger college crowd, and which is a real concern that the alcohol industry needs to pay attention to very closely. And I've already pointed out to you some of the issues with respect to regulating that type of stuff and having a real health or safety reason or other legal reason to stop it, absent public policy measures to try to prevent it. Pat wanted me to talk a little bit about Granholm. I'm not going to get into it at great length, obviously. I was the principal attorney involved in the case, but we worked very closely with the Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers. It was a very interesting case. Michigan really took the lead with New York on it, and we had 36 other state attorney generals on our side. We won in the district court. We lost in the Sixth Circuit. I think part of the reason was that we lost in the Sixth Circuit was because there was a tornado warning that went off during part of our argument, and the Sixth Circuit couldn't even hear it. So I guess to whatever extent that might have had any influence, it was pretty well wiped out at that point. No, I'm just kidding. I think what happened really is one of the judges asked me, Mr. McGehee, are you serious? Do you really inspect the wine barrels? And right after that question, I knew we were in a lot of trouble. So we lost there 3-0, but what we did do is we filed a petition for certiorari, and those are, even though we had a split of authority among the circuits with respect to the 21st Amendment and the Commerce Clause interplay, we actually beat the odds, and we had it granted. Generally, only about 4% of those petitions actually get granted, a little higher if you got a split of authority in the circuits. So that was quite an accomplishment, and of course we went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and our Solicitor General, Tom Casey, argued it, and as well as the New York Attorney General. But we worked very closely with the Michigan Beer and Wine Wholesalers. We had incredible talent of counsel consulting with us. We had moot courts. There was a tremendous amount of preparation all up until the argument. And Catherine Sullivan was on the other side. Ken Bollock, very famous attorneys, well known, were arguing on the wine shipment side. They wanted to get the wine into the state, and we wanted to keep it out. Not necessarily wanted to keep it out, but we wanted to regulate it. It was a product discrimination case, and we couldn't regulate outside wineries like we can inside wineries, and that was one of the main themes of our defense, and based on past precedents and the clear text of the 21st Amendment that states rights to regulate alcohol. We were arguing on that basis. But I remember the preparatory hearing before we went in to argue the case. Ted Olson, you might know, the former U.S. Solicitor General, pretty famous figure, was in the room, and I got to talking to him a little bit, and I said, well, I tried to advocate for actually arguing this case because I've never argued in the U.S. Supreme Court, and every attorney wants to argue in the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, that's like the ultimate measure. But I tell you, after I saw all the preparations and the incredible legal talent that I was around, I wasn't so sure if I really wanted to argue it. But he was going, well, don't worry, something might happen to your Solicitor General. You never know, he might have a heart attack or something like that, and then you're going to have to get up there and argue it. So he was obviously pulling my leg. But I was kind of amused to see that the former U.S. Solicitor General had a sense of humor as well. And after Granholm, it was a 5-4 decision. We lost, just barely lost. In the aftermath of the Granholm, there was these obnoxious commercials that were taking place that really got on my nerves. This is one of them.
Took Beethoven 4 years to write that symphony. Some things can't be rushed. Good music and good wine. Paul Masson's Emerald Dry. A delicious white wine. Paul Masson wines taste so good because they're made with such care. What Paul Masson himself said nearly a century ago is still true today. We will sell no wine before it's time.
And for those of you that were involved in the case, that's Professor Tanford doing that commercial. Right there. And I just want to emphasize at the end right here of the integration between the alcohol policy groups. Very impressive that the program that Judge.
Thank you very much, Don. I apologize to everybody here because we're going to break right now at 10 o'clock without questions, but I relented, and I think we ought to have. We tried to jam too much maybe into this series this morning because you saw all these folks have a lot to offer. So if you don't mind, and if you have to leave, that's fine. I'd like to, if everybody's okay with it, open it up for 5 minutes of questions because I think these people deserve to at least get their brains picked a little bit more. They've got good brains. So do we have any questions from our comments? I don't see any hands, I'm going to ask one. I would, over the course of my career as a parent, have heard said to me many times by many of my friends and people I know that they would rather have their children and their friends drink at home than go out and drive and drink or go to parties. So they'll have these parties that we read about in the paper that involve everybody dropping off their keys at a parent's house and staying there overnight, and the parents are thinking they're doing the right thing. I know it's caused a lot of controversy around the country, and people have gone to jail, but I'd just like to start out a question or a discussion period with you all by commenting on that, and I'd like to ask Judge Allen if he'd lead off on that, please.
That's an excellent question, Pat. And the case that I referenced that occurred involving the students from Holt actually is sort of a variation of that same question. And the gentlemen that were convicted and ended up doing jail time in my court were the three guys that had a party. And the reason that they were convicted was because they had engaged in a conspiracy to provide minors with alcohol. That is a 1-year misdemeanor in this jurisdiction. And so they ended up having to plead guilty to that offense. They could have been found guilty probably of something more significant, and as a matter of fact, they were charged with a more significant crime. But at the end of the day, they ended up pleading guilty to that 1-year misdemeanor. So I've been using that example to talk to parents about that whole notion that they think that it's okay to provide their kids with alcohol. It is illegal under all circumstances, except for some religious observances, to provide a minor with alcohol. And so if you are found to be having done that, our prosecutor, at least here in Ingham County, will prosecute.
Anybody else want to make a comment to that?
Oh, I was going to reiterate the judge's notion on that. In Muskegon, we had a rather significant parent bust. It was a pastor. Yeah, she decided to take all the keys, take all their coats and their shoes, and had over 100 kids in North Muskegon partying at her home. And our North Muskegon, one of our members, Officer Behrman, went in and busted it. What happened is immediate disbursement with kids without shoes in the middle of winter, with no coats, no shoes, and they were scattered to the winds. It's just, she thought she was doing right. Never in her mind did she think she was doing wrong. But she did get sentenced to jail. As a matter of fact, Judge Andy Waringo, also has a very active sobriety court. He actually said, I'm incredulous on this. I'm concerned that we're going to send a wrong message to parents. So in Muskegon, our prosecutor, Tony Tagg, and our judges are they're affirming what we're saying, that drinking, providing alcohol at home is not a good thing. So, and that's exciting for us to see.
Do you have any social host ordinances within Muskegon County or any communities within Muskegon County?
Well, in certain, that's a very good question. So I can't answer that right now, but I know I've seen social host ordinance or language before, but it bears investigation. I believe many school districts have done safe party pledges with their school boards. Kids are not allowed, parents are not allowed to hold any of that.
Just a second, I think there was one response. Penny, did you want to make a response?
Well, just very quickly, I would say that the added flaw to that mindset, unfortunately, on the part of adults, is that you open the gates. And what I mean by that is that kids, in the way that they traditionally think and react in that type of situation, is that once a parent says, I don't care if you drink as long as you do it here, gets translated to, I don't care if you drink. And it's simply naive, unfortunately, for adults to think that if I allow it here in my home and I protect my child, that everything is going to be okay, because it does not stop there. It oftentimes begins there. And so these kids are drinking at other places at other times, unsupervised. They have the keys. They may be in the back 40. They may be in an apartment. They may be in a hotel room. But the message has a long-standing impact in terms of giving permission, for kids to drink beyond the legality.
Let's go out here for a question, yes, sir.
I'm Donald Tex Bryant, and I'm from Kent County with a Drug-Free Communities Grant. Just wanted to bring to your note about a social hosting law. Recently, the city of Walker passed a social hosting law that became effective on January 1, and Chief Garcia Lindstrom has been testifying to its effectiveness. And also, Granville is also thinking of adopting the same ordinance and has passed regulatory approval.
Thanks, Tex. I appreciate that, dealing with the social hosting that Ronnie brought. Any other comments from the panel? I'd like to take the Mr. Tobias, last question, please.
All right, great. I'm interested in hearing from the panel on why you think a lot of policymakers, we know it works to reduce this problem, but why aren't we implementing
want to know why policymakers seem to be going in the other direction from what some of the speakers were talking about?
Yeah, why are we looking at, why isn't the board?
Anybody want to take a crack at that?
We need to engage them. I had two state reps here today, Representative Holly Hughes and Marcia Hobby Wright from Muskegon were here. We're engaging, and we also have Katie from Senator Hansen's office here. Here's the thing, talk to them. We also have to be consistent in our messaging. You know, MLBA might have something different from the drug-free community support program, from prevention, and sometimes we don't have the same story, we're not telling the same story to the legislator. We don't need to create a lot of confusion, but we need to actually start engaging them one-on-one. And that's what we've been doing in Muskegon for quite a while. So we just need to engage, Mike.
Yeah, I think Jerry wanted to make a mention on this one too.
Yeah, this is just a really quick comment. And I think Penny alluded to it in her comments. It is profitability against the whole idea that we're going to regulate. And in my experience, from a director standpoint in an agency that regulates, many times it's the some members of the industry that says, hey, look, you know, we're not gonna, you're making some of these things up, they're not really happening. And as I started out by saying the facts with a little story about the grandpa, it's really important that we get the facts out there, and that the perception are really attacked, that nothing bad is gonna happen if we do regulate, that clearly we're gonna constantly have to educate and make sure that the facts about the situation from a law enforcement standpoint is certainly out there.
Yes, go ahead, Scott.
This thing's on there. Actually, I don't get it.
Yes, you do. We'd like to take you in case you need to go to court.
That won't be the first time. Again, from the industry side, I want to point out, and we won't get into the whole tax debate, I think just like anything else, we can show statistics on many different levels, and statistics can be manipulated, and I won't talk about working with the state and highway safety stuff, and I think also how we collect the data on certain topics need to be addressed. And I won't get into the drunk driving, and one alcohol is considered an alcohol-related crash, regardless of what happens. But I think it is education. I think it's engaging. I think engaging in this type of debate and discussion is extremely important. But we got to remember that it is a right in the state, and we want to make sure that to have this, and it is regulated. I won't disagree that taxing and raising prices does affect it, but it does everything else. But it also increases smuggling, and we see it with tobacco, and we see it with alcohol. So we have to balance it, like this whole panel says. We have to find a way to balance it out and make it work properly, and still work safely and educate all the way around.
Yes, I want to take the opportunity, thank you, Scott, to thank our panelists today. Thank Jerry for coming in from Arizona. Good to have you back in Michigan, my friend. Penny, nice to have you here, and keep up your good work. Don McGehee, you got a good sense of humor. You're just not as quick as I am with the humor, that's all. Judge Allen, you have to really be around this business for a while to know the impact this man has made in a short period of time in the sobriety courts. And he uses the tough love, but as you can see by the statistics, he's getting rave reviews with the way he counsels people. And that's a real important thing. You gotta be able, we all know in our businesses we have to connect with people. Judge Allen, you do a great job. Laura, thank you for being here from Muskegon and all you're doing on the west side. And Scott, congratulations on your new job. Thank you for your years of service to the community. And I want to thank everybody here. We believe at the Center for Alcohol Policy, as Jerry said, that this kind of dialogue needs to happen more often in more places. And we are going to have one more in the series. That'll be 2 weeks from Thursday. We're May 3rd. We're going to have some great speakers in talking about alcohol deregulation, what's going on around the country and in Michigan. We're going to have our own chairman of Liquor Commission, Andy Deloney, will be here. We're going to have Steve Schmidt, Vice President of the National Association of Alcohol Beverage Control States, and he's going to kind of give us an overview of what's going on around the country, states like Washington, Pennsylvania, and Virginia that are going through real big discussions, some actions on deregulation. We're going to have Pam Erickson in from Arizona that Jerry referenced earlier, done a lot of work on what's going on around the world, especially in the United Kingdom. We're also going to have Brandon Denning, who is from Cumberland Law School in Birmingham, Alabama, come in and speak, and Howard Goldberg, one of our old friends from 30 years of business in the Attorney General's office in the alcohol industry. So we're gonna have a good panel for you. Stop back, breakfast is free. That's always a good price. Thank you for being with us.
Oh, yeah, he does too. Oh, yeah, Steve Warren. Yep.
I'm really nervous about making that flight, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, blame it on them. Right.
My mom, you know, so we're very supportive.
Oh my God, Andy Newman, how are you? I'm great. Tom. He's the administrative director. I'm working with him. Yeah, well,
Very nice. Over Muskegon.
Okay, so tell us about the importance of strong alcohol regulations when it comes to public safety.
Well, this was an exciting discussion today from the viewpoint of a number of different stakeholders, particularly law enforcement, in the sense that we are concerned about the accessibility, we're concerned about the affordability, and we're concerned about the controllability of alcohol. We understand that it is a unique consumer product and that it requires regulation. We're looking for that balance, the balance that allows state regulators to regulate because it is a state-based system. On the other hand, we're also looking for opportunities to have the industry to be a profitable industry. And so people have a right to drink, they have a right to have alcohol beverages, but we also have a right to protect ourselves for the consequences of some of that. So that's what this discussion was about. It was a great discussion, and we're really looking forward to some advancements and more understanding in terms of the education from the Center of Alcohol Policy.
That's it.
That's it?
That's it.
Cool. Good.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.